Okay, so we're going to talk about the referendum initiated by the citizen in deeper detail here, because as you remember from an interview I did with Roman Light a couple of days ago where we talked about the RIC, or the referendum initiated by the citizen, that is starting to be birthed a little bit further out of this France Yellow Vest movement that's been forming. This particular thing, there are nuances, there are details here, there are some misconceptions that we did cover a little bit in the interview, but I wanted to get a little bit more clear on and a little deeper on, because I truly believe that this RIC movement, this referendum initiated by the citizen, in the short term has the potential to create massive change on this planet and truly pull power from a physical structure point of view away from the cabal. Now, this is incredibly important because in essence, this is like an antidote to the cabal. In a previous video, I had talked about, I believe it was the antidote to the cabal, I talked about how we need to stop voting and participating in the system. Now, what the misunderstandings that so often come is that people get too obsessed with semantics, right? We begin looking at it, well, how is voting in itself evil? No one's saying that voting in itself is evil just as the idea, the tool of voting. We're saying that within the system, right? Within what happens in our current world, when we show up and we vote, we're continuing to perpetuate that system over and over and over again. If we had a new system, or we had a new way of being, or if legitimate people that were perpetuating a different system was in place, maybe voting at that point wouldn't necessarily be such I guess an act that just holds in things that it produces our own enslavement, right? But when we start looking at the system today, yes, voting is a very useless act other than to continue to perpetuate the system and to continue to put, as Roman spoke in the previous interview, you're putting the knife in the hand of the psychopath, right? Now, it's not to say that we need to get all caught up in these people being psychopaths, but that's the analogy he used, because it's true when you look at the fact that these people are not acting particularly on the best interest of humanity. And although we continue decade after decade to have that perception that people are doing this, they're not, right? Politicians are really not working in the best interest of the people, and government is simply a parent that holds down, or that says to the child, i.e. the people, you don't understand it, you don't get it, I'll do it for you. And then anytime we have an issue, government, mom, dad, I need help, right? And it's time for us to grow up out of this whole entire process. So how does the referendum initiated by the citizen help us do this, right? And obviously, referendum initiated by the citizen requires that we're going to have to vote. But here's why it may be a hell of a lot more valuable to vote in this particular type of setting, as opposed to the illusion of democracy that we have today. So let's get into exactly what it is. If we were to look at this, now people will say, oh, like someone said recently, Canada does have referendums, which is correct. And there are referendums seen in other countries around the world as well. However, typically what happens is referendums are only applicable on certain issues, not all issues. That's point number one that we really have to understand. Number two, a lot of referendums are very complicated and are very difficult to actually get instated. And in a lot of ways, it still requires some level of government approval before it actually goes through, which is insanity, because that means that still the parent is telling you what you can and cannot do at all times. So you as the people, or me as well, right? We don't really have power. So we gotta pretend, and we gotta look at this idea of what referendums really are when we're talking about the RIC, because in this particular case, we can imagine it as such. We propose as people that you set something up, and the example Roman used was if you took 1% of the population. So wherever you are in whatever country, whatever the population is, you require, say, 1% of people to agree on a particular referendum. That upon getting the approval of 1% of the people, it automatically triggers an official referendum that goes up for vote for people, the rest of the citizen of the country, to then vote on, right? So a small amount of people, right, but still a substantial enough amount of people actually have the power to say, hey, let's start talking about this issue on a deeper manner. And you recall from previous videos, I always say it's better for us to get together and talk about stuff than just to continue to put our energy into the system, which continually does not produce the result. So here we are talking about the stuff. 1% of people talk about it, we get it, we move it forward. Then it goes to a vote. Then it requires, and this number, we can set up as an agreement as humanity here and in particular countries, but we could say, let's say 70% of the population has to vote on that particular issue for the referendum to be considered official based on the end result. So if only 65% of people come out and actually vote and the other 35% don't, then it means that this thing isn't done. Not enough people showed up, not enough people got engaged. So then it's not official. It doesn't get it doesn't get put into the system. So it's very, very important that a lot of people start coming out. Now, what's going to differentiate a lot of people coming out for these sorts of votes, for these sorts of decisions versus what we have today? Well, most people, whether they're intelligent, not intelligent, however you want to look at it, because I know people love to put labels on people, right? Whether it doesn't matter how you look at people, right? Most people that don't participate, they don't feel inspired to continue to participate in the system. I learned in my late teens that it made no sense for me to start voting. By the time I actually could vote, when I was 18 years old, I voted one time. And the only reason why I voted was because I was like, okay, I want to go try this. Everyone else has always done it. And I went and I saw the process and I felt the process. I felt the energy of the process. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. I'm watching what happens in my world. I'm watching what I'm doing here. I'm being told if I have a problem, I got to message my representative. But how am I heard? How is a group of people heard? When I enter into a dinner table conversation and everybody at the dinner table is not approving of the war that is taking place, I go, why are we at war? What say do these people have on the war? You put a puppet in place, they have a set of policies. Nobody ever delivers on like most of their policies, every now and then, yes. But why are we doing this? Why are we pretending like we have a voice in this particular system? When are we going to grow up and realize we don't have a voice in this particular system? And voting is not a voice. Voting is saying, I consent for you to continue doing this, to continue playing part in this. And the solution is, yes, in the short term, producing a system where the government can no longer make overarching decisions without getting the approval of the people who are truly the ones in power. So now, instead of a referendum that has to be approved by the government, instead of a referendum that can only come up on certain issues, we give the power to the people and say we can create referendums that we all collectively vote on, that decides what actually happens. So now corporations can't just manipulate and put in lobbyists to go and control government and how government runs, because guess what? If it's not approved by the people, it ain't happening. If you start seeing big decisions like, oh, okay, well, we're going to start a war. We're going to spend, billions, if not trillions in taxpayer dollars on going to war and killing people based on an enemy we created ourselves anyway. But, we're going and doing that. And all of a sudden it's like, well, if the people don't approve, it's not going to happen. So this is actually giving power to the people. This is making it so that these people can't, or the government cannot actually just make decisions all the time. So we're taking the power away from them and we're putting it back into everybody. And we all have a voice. This is how you actually have a voice. To repeat, voting in our current system, you do not have a voice, plain and simple. You have an illusion of a voice. And we need to come to terms with that deeply. So when people say, okay, great, well, what about all the people who have no idea, they don't understand any of the issues that are brought forth in a referendum, how are we going to get them engaged? I'm not saying this is going to be like, boom, we institute this and suddenly it works. I'm saying this is the process that starts to pull us out of this enslavement that we're in right now, where we have no power. And over time, as people start to realize, hey, we're actually getting power. We're actually, like when I heard about this and when I started to feel this, as someone who doesn't vote, and I specifically don't vote because I choose not to consent to this system, I believe, like I start thinking about this and I go, I'm actually going to have power. And so is everybody else. And this is really important. This is going to inspire me to want to be involved in a lot of the different things that are happening, the different things that are being put forth by other people. Because guess what? At the end of the day, I actually have a say. And there's nobody who can suddenly strip that say out from under me, i.e. what government is today, and just suddenly say, oh yeah, well, we didn't actually want to put through that policy. Because it has to be done. And there's nobody that's above in terms of power. That's it, that's all. That's what this is. That's what the referendum initiated by the citizen is about. It's about giving us the power back. It's about ending this relationship with government where they're the parent and we are the child. And we need to grow up to that. We need to understand that humanity is going through a growth process. And the other aspect of this referendum initiated by the citizen that I think is so important is that humanity, as we grow and evolve, we need to create systems that are a hell of a lot more fluid than they are today. They're not these rigid systems where everything is slow and, oh my gosh, and everything's stuck, and then it takes a revolution to, why does it need a revolution every single time we want to change something big? It doesn't make any sense, right? Whereby we create a referendum initiated by the citizen where, guess what? We made a decision. We collectively voted on it. It's great. A year later, we evolve in our ideas. We evolve in our understandings. We evolve in our hearts. We evolve in our physical world and our technologies. And suddenly we realize, hey, this old thing that we voted on last year, we actually could bring it up to shift and change again, because now we realize that we've evolved. And so someone could come up with these ideas, share it, what do you think of this? We come together, bingo bango. Now all of a sudden we have another referendum. We can change it again. And the people, as long as they can agree on the situation, we all get involved, we make it happen. So it allows us to fluidly grow and evolve, and thus do that to our systems as well. Because that's who we are as beings. We grow and evolve. That's what happens. That's why it's like we're feeling so like everybody, I know, I can see it on people's faces. I feel it within myself. You look at the system and you go, this doesn't feel good. This doesn't represent me. And all the upheaval and all the different things that people are feeling inside when they blow up on their families, a lot of it is just like we're feeling deeply like something's got to change here within ourselves, right? Both within our consciousness, but also within our systems around us. And we're not going to get there. We're not going to do that if we don't start taking our power back from government, who is not working in our best interest, period, right? So this is a huge, huge thing that we got to start looking at. And the last kicker that I got to mention here, that we got to make sure as citizens, as we continue to put forth solutions like this, we got to look at it and we got to say, all media is allowed to be involved in covering these referendum processes. And mainstream media has to live stream, perhaps, their full interviews or their full coverage of something so that there is a full gamut of understanding of what someone says and what someone's about and what's going on, so that they can't manipulate it all the time. Because the reality of the situation is the mainstream media has always been used as a tool for the government in place, i.e. just the shadow government, just the cabal, just the elite. It's been used as a tool for them to manipulate people into supporting or into getting behind stuff, making people feel guilty for not voting as if they're not putting their power into something. Meanwhile, people are becoming more intelligent. They're realizing, wait, it doesn't add up. I go to the voting booth, I vote for something, nothing changes, we're complaining again all over again. And they still convince you to vote in this current system, remember, right? Whereas, and that's what the purpose of the mainstream media is, to continue to keep us engaged in drama, in all the left-right battle, all this stuff. Referendum initiated by the citizen means, guess what? Politics crumbles. It doesn't matter anymore, because no one's manipulating you to think a certain way. Instead, we present issues. There's no one in power. There's no one deciding what's going to happen all the time. So politics become useless. All the division of people becomes useless because they don't have the power anymore. But in order for us to get there, we got to be willing to let go of the old. We got to be willing to look at our old system and say, what are we doing? This doesn't make sense. We don't got to do this anymore, right? And if we're not willing to do that, if we don't have the courage to do that, things like this won't happen. We got to have the courage to be able to look at our old system. Don't worry about what everyone else is going to think. Think about you. Think about what you decide to do. What's meaningful to you. When you look at this as a proposed solution, think about yourself. Does this make sense to you? Is this something you would participate in? Because if you don't have the courage to say that you would participate in this, then it means that you're not even opening the door for everyone else to feel, yeah, I would do this. All that matters, change starts within, is all that matters is that we shift our consciousness to the point where we can begin pulling our faith out of the old and start looking at new options and saying, I have the courage to do this. I don't have a boatload of fear stories and a boatload of programming getting in the way of me seeing truly how freeing this entire solution truly is. So that's what this is about. And when you're watching this video and when you want to share this with other people to get them to realize, and this is why I want this to go viral, is I want people to realize how truly powerful this solution is in the short term. Yes, deep down the road, it may change and we may realize, yeah, we can even shift things even further. But the reality of the situation is we won't have to pull down a ruling elite, a ruling cabal structure, because the people will be able to make the decision. And that's what this is about. And yes, the cabal, they're all part of the people too. We just got to stop giving them our power, because they don't actually have power other than what we voluntarily give them. That's it, that's all. Hey YouTube, thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and share a comment if you have anything to say. You can also subscribe to our channel just above my head up here so you can get more videos like this. Collective Evolution stays alive in this era of massive censorship through support from viewers like you. Up in the right-hand corner of the screen, you can join our Conscious Media Movement campaign, which allows you to become a monthly supporter and help keep conscious media and Collective Evolution alive. Thanks and peace.